The Soldier of Tomorrow, The War of Time. A soldier wakes up on the trenches of the Second World War. He is exhausted and afraid. He has ventured through the rocks in search of a safe shelter to protect himself from the terrible attacks of the Second World War. Klaus Müller is a young German who decided to desert his army as soon as he went into combat with the first actions of his infantry. He ended up distancing himself without any of his officers noticing, ran through the woods and eventually reached a territory in northern Germany, hiding in a beach location. The soldier was so distressed by the devastation of the war that he simply refused to obey its command, preferring to flee and follow his mind, to get away from the violence and deaths he saw, from his friends and acquaintances succumbing. Klaus knew that if he was found to be a deserter, he could be arrested or even eliminated by the terrible Nazi army. He survived for several days, and to minimize his suffering and anguish, he was able to carry doses of methamphetamine, which made him more alert and fought depression. However, the consequence was that this stimulant also made him drowsy when not used. It made the soldier completely black out for many hours. His body asked for rest from the several hours of tension in the war. Klaus practically fainted several times a day. When he woke up in the trench on the beach, he saw a totally different landscape than when he had arrived. Instead of the rocks and the lighthouse that existed on the site, in front of it there was a large path between the sea. After he saw and noticed nothing, neither people nor other soldiers, he concluded that he was there alone and could walk peacefully, following the huge path that looked more like an endless wall. He walked for miles until he came to a huge metal gate. At that moment he began to regret having walked there. When he thought of returning, the gate opened and another soldier quickly appeared and questioned him. "Soldier, what are you doing here still standing there? The command is waiting for you. Were you able to complete the mission successfully? We will urgently pass the data to our leadership." Klaus didn't understand anything. Afraid, he accompanied the other soldier, where they came to a driving that he didn't even understand what it was like. He didn't know it. In fact, he didn't know anything, neither the environment, nor the soldiers and anything around him. He arrived at a strange place where he quickly moved on to another environment. It seemed to be energized, and automatically he entered the empty space through this machine and jumped into an enclosed environment, where the army general was, who asked for explanations about the mission. "Soldier, what uniform are you wearing? Are you part of infiltrating and succeeding in the mission? Did you get the data we need? We are in a hurry and you are vital to the success of our army. This time we will put an implant in your skin and resend it." Klaus was terrified and didn't know what to say because he didn't understand anything. To protect himself, he made up a story saying that he would return to the initial place where he was, because he had been followed by enemy troops and had hidden in the trenches of a beach. But that he would be able to have the data that the command requested, that he would immediately return successfully from the mission. Then it was sent again by the machine. This time the soldier, passing by it, was immediately back in the trenches of the beach. He thought he was having vertigo from the antidepressant medication he was taking. He couldn't understand anything. They sounded like hallucinations, but he could remember all the details. He looked back and saw that the walled path was no longer present, it was gone. The soldier decided to return to the command base of the German army. As he began to return to his army, look for other soldiers and at the same time create a good excuse for his disappearance of days, when he deserted, fleeing the scene of combat towards the calm trenches of the beach. After a long walk he contacted his superiors, saying that he was captured by the enemy army but managed to escape, finding a strategic hiding place among the rocks on a beach in the northern area. The Nazi command did not believe this story. He arrested Klaus and left him for several days in solitary confinement. During all these days, the soldier faced depression and the devastating effects of withdrawal from his medication. He freaked out several times, becoming paranoid and having spasms and pain, until he couldn't take it anymore and decided to tell the truth to his superiors. I need to tell you what really happened during this entire period that I disappeared. I deserted, I fled the army out of fear of fighting in war. I saw my friends fall into the trenches and the movements of the infantry. I hid north on a beach. I ended up on heavy medication for depression, and these methamphetamines freaked out with my body for several days. I must warn you that there is indeed an enemy army in that location. Through an extensive wall in the middle of the sea, a powerful base is with advanced weapons ready to destroy the German army. I managed to persuade them. The command ended up believing my story, and here I am. You are at risk, the war may be lost. I need to get out of here and get back to combat. Immediately the communique was passed to the generals of the Nazi army. The German leader then gave a final verdict relating to what happened to the soldier. This soldier has special conduct problems. He was heavily dependent on antidepressants that made him addicted to these medications. These methamphetamines are forbidden and very dangerous. They are synthetic drugs that stimulate better performance, but for a long time used, their lack leads to hallucinations, paranoia, and surreal visions. Keep this soldier in solitary confinement until his end. Private Klaus found himself imprisoned for many days in solitary confinement, where his complaints were no longer heard by the German army. There he thought about his life and all the history that took place. He himself accepted that he had freaked out and seen surreal images of another dimension, another environment in a future time. It was a whole story of his head affected by methamphetamine acting dangerously on his brain. But then he remembered a detail. When he arrived at the machine where he talked to the army of the future, he remembered that when he returned, the commander had said that an implant would be placed in his skin. Then he sought to see some different sign in his body. During the night he began to grope all over his body looking for some different detail. When he reached the back of his neck, he noticed that it was protruding and there seemed to be some object under his skin. He pressed it as if there was a button, and from then on he fell asleep instantly. In the morning his cell was checked and inexplicably it was empty. Klaus had mysteriously disappeared. The German army then concluded that someone had freed the soldier and he had fled again, but it was unknown how this really happened during the night. Meanwhile, in the future, a soldier would return to his real army and awaken with reports from his command. Klaus, you have successfully returned from your mission. He managed to reach the heart of the enemy base and through his implant contacted us to his real location. From now on, we will monitor all the devastating actions of this war of the past so that we can stop it once and for all. Our influence will determine a future without the destruction of planet Earth. No, you were not paranoid about your medications when these visions occurred. You were chosen by us and you traveled back in time to confirm that the past would not be altered. The continuation of Nazism would pose an imminent risk to the planet. You were rescued through a time portal that morning. From inside your cell you were transferred here in the future, your new and final home. You are free from war and your chemical dependency. Soldier, you're a hero.